everybody, I'm Wally Rashid, prop and co-correspondent. I'm here with Elina Xenophontos, Middle East geopolitical analyst and international law and globalization expert. Recently, this is just breaking, a video went viral of Tom Barrack, the U.S. ambassador to Turkey, calling Lebanese journalists animalistic. Take a listen to this.
Okay, wait. We're going to have a different set of rules, right? Please be quiet for a moment. And I want to tell you something. The moment that this starts becoming chaotic, like animalistic, we're gone. So you want to know what's happening? Act civilized, act kind, act tolerant, because this is the problem with what's happening in the region.
A lot to unpack there. He says that this is the problem that's happening in the region. First off, what are your overall thoughts on just watching that? What comes to mind right away?
Oh, a couple of things. Firstly, I just want to speak as to the hypocrisy of his statements. When we've all seen what happens in any American sort of media sort of conference, it's probably some of the worst in the world. It's also the home to, paparazzi among many other things. But yet he has the audacity to show up in Lebanon and call the media reporters there as animalistic. But the second thing that also draws to my attention, has drawn attention to me personally, is the kind of imperialist and colonialist mentality and the rhetoric and the arrogance by which he delivers something. Because, historically, colonialists, the colonial EU, for not EU, European powers, as well as even the United States, had something that was called the standard of civilization. And the standard of civilization, although it wasn't necessarily de facto international law, it was a principle that was used by the colonialists in order to justify the colonization of other peoples around the world as being subpar, that basically they're people that are animalistic. They don't know how to govern themselves. They don't know how to behave. They don't have a centralized form of government or in a way that is considered, it doesn't meet the Western criteria of what is civilization. And they use that as the criterion and the basis by which to justify the perpetual, constant expansion and a colonial occupation of these territories. So this idea of civilization that is linked to what the West considers to be civilized, and sort of everybody outside that scope falling subpar. And it actually even echoes similar statements that were made a couple of years ago by Joseph Borrell, which he was the foreign minister of the EU Commission, who had actually said that, the Europe, and particularly Western Europe, is like the beautiful garden among the world, which is a jungle. Again, sort of referencing this idea that, European states the West or the Anglo-American world are the civilized world, and everybody outside that scope is effectively uncivilized. And the third thing that I would say, I know you said like the quick off my head, but I'll just say this as well, was obviously the way that they try to create this idea that everything that's happening in the region is fundamentally because the people here are effectively so barbaric, uncivilized, and hateful of each other that they need, again, the West. See, it justifies their imperialism in the country, in these countries, and their influence and their constant need to monitor the Middle East, when in reality, the entire region is burning because of Western intervention, control, and sponsoring of genocide and regime changes within the region, as well as other groups that have been dangerous in the region, therefore establishing divide and rule within the territory for the purpose of providing the pretext that will justify Western influence and presence here. So it's kind of interesting to see how he says, oh, see, you're all uncivilized, this is why this is happening, but they have actually caused the problem, which allows them to further justify their involvement and imperial control over the region, which goes back to the standard of civilization that was the basis of colonialism.
Yeah, and I mean, just commenting on the hypocrisy again, we've seen so many videos of Trump having press conferences in the White House briefing room and whatnot, exactly the same, if not worse, just as much yelling.
Mm-hmm.
So he's coming in with this preconceived
Worse.
idea that these people, that Arabs, Middle Easterners, are animalistic. It's the hypocrisy there that has no real basis in any sort of factual difference between the reporters there and here.
Yeah, it's just rooted in a fundamental racism as well that you need to have in order to justify, obviously, the control, influence, and subjugation of a people, which is very much rooted in the way that the system is structured. So yes, it's incredibly hypocritical because we have seen, like I said, worse in the United States. In fact, I think it's probably some of the worst. The way that the media, reporters, and journalists in any sort of press conference or even outside that is so aggressive, because it's the way that the business is structured there as well. To then go to Lebanon and claim that they're uncivilized, it's majorly hypocritical, but also speaks volumes as to way that the Lebanese people are viewed. But also, what I didn't like is the way that the arrogance by which by Tom Barrack showed up in Lebanon, showing the degree of influence as well that the United States now has over Lebanon. I mean, Lebanon is really and truthfully turning into a colony of the United States with its new recent U.S. embassy that might pretty much is a military base at this point, and the way that they essentially have compromised the entire leadership there and are pretty much dictating the terms as to the disarmament of Hezbollah and everything. So you can really see, I mean, they're constantly claiming that it's Iran that has influence over Lebanon. It's the United States who's there speaking down to the Lebanese people, dictating to the president what he can and cannot do, disarming their resistance, and pretty much speaking to them as though they're inferior, uncivilized peoples. So it does also show who's running the show in Lebanon, and that is the United States.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I was a reporter, I would, the second he said that, I would have just walked right out. I wish they did. Like how could they just allow to be spoken to that way? It's so dehumanizing and belittling. It ties into the larger region. And this view that Israel is this tiny country surrounded by hostile, evil people. Does it not?
It does. It absolutely does, because that's the narrative that's often sold by Western media. Our poor Israel, small country surrounded by uncivilized barbarians that obviously needs to be protected. And so, yeah, the way that the Lebanese reporters were treated, but also the epithets that he used to describe them, pretty much fit into this narrative. Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East, the only civilized state in the Middle East, that needs to be protected at all costs from these, barbaric people. It's rather telling. And like you said, if I was a reporter there and I was spoken to in that way, I would have walked out. But I also think that it needs to be a massive wake up call to the totality of the Lebanese population, and not just those that support the Hezbollah or the overall resistance, because there are also factions within Lebanese society that do want to adhere or align with the West. And I hope that this is a wake up call as to how the West views them.
Yeah, absolutely. And exactly, it touches on all of that and more. There's this view also that, again, Israel is this little thing, and even within Israel, and this is the thing, is that it shows that they're not a good faith actor. They're not a good faith mediator in the Middle East, because they view that they're basically dealing with all of these animalistic countries and all of these animalistic people. So all they want to do is just give piecemeal and be nice to them to keep them settled and quiet, while they just focus on Israel. It shows that they're not even a good faith mediator, and they go into this with a preconceived notion that they just use all of these different countries to their advantage. They don't view them as equal.
Oh, of course, 100%. I mean, this is something that's a given. The United States obviously has its own agenda, and it also is very deeply tied with Israel. It's never going to be a good faith negotiator. It's not unbiased. It's not. It's purely. It's a. The United States is purely driven by its own agenda that is, like I said, tied to Israel. So, I mean, it also, this kind of rhetoric as well also justifies the level of violence that the Lebanese people, as well as the Palestinians and the Yemenis, are enduring. I mean, we saw how barbaric Israel's attacks on the south of Lebanon were, for instance. So by using this kind of rhetoric, you're trying to normalize that these people are somewhat almost worthy of the Western imperialist wrath that they're constantly faced with. It's the same kind of, it goes back, it ties together with do you remember what the Israeli defense minister said on October 8th? Human animals about
Yeah.
the Palestinians. It's exactly the same thing. Stop behaving like animals. This constant rhetoric about speaking about people from West Asia, as they do Africa, as they do in different parts of the world, as human animals. uneducated, or in case of Latin America, everybody's just, a criminal. It's always a way of dehumanizing, devaluation, so as to justify the violence and the authoritarian nature of the structures that are meant to kind of oppress them at all times. It's utterly disgusting.
Absolutely. And do you think that I don't think it will be a wake up call. I think things will continue the way that they are. Uh, do you see any future for the Middle East where they're able to regain their power?
As in the United States or Israel or both.
As in Middle Eastern countries outside of the United
I'm
States and
Middle East, okay.
Israel being able to regain any sort of autonomy or any sort of power. Saudi Arabia seems like they're trying, but they're still heavily intertwined and influenced by Western control.
I think that a lot of the aspirations that the West has within the region will ultimately fail. And they will fail because they don't have the kind of resources that they're claiming to have. A lot of their aspirations with regards to Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, and trying to turn them into these sort of hubs in order to reward them effectively will also collapse, because Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states they do not have the sort of the experts and the expertise or the infrastructure to kind of counter China's growing, I guess, influence in the areas of tech, etc. So, as well as the agenda of establishing these trade routes and pipelines within a region that now is, bleeding in war and chaos, not just in Palestine, but probably at some point again in Lebanon and in Syria. I think all these projects create a very the objective that they have is within a very unstable area that will ultimately fail. And what it will actually do, this is my personal opinion, is that it will have a boomerang effect, whereby the population in West Asia as a whole will become very outraged at the continued violence that's basically taking place. And we're going to start to see a destabilization occurring even within the Gulf states. But that, I think, is somewhat of a good thing, because if that was to happen, we do need to see some sort of radical change taking place as well, whether it's Saudi Arabia, the UAE, etc., because then we can see some actual change, and not monarchs that were placed there by the British and by the West and that serve their interest, and that we will actually start to see that the people are holding these monarchs even accountable, or will push for some real revolutionary change that will therefore change the overall dynamics of West Asia and how it's being played. It's the same thing as well in Jordan. I mean, we have a monarch there who's Abdullah, his family was placed there by, again, the British Empire, by the British, and it has been sustained by the West. It's been sustained by the British, but also by Israel. Why? Because he serves their interest. But the more they're provoking, the more they're pushing, with the genocide, or even if they try something like ethnically cleansing Gaza, which they need to, they will have to try to do or find another way to placate them. That's going to actively create mass chaos in a lot of countries within West Asia where the people do care about the Palestinians. It will be sort of crossing a line, and it will create so much destabilization that my humble opinion is the West won't be able, and Israel won't be able to achieve their goals. And we're going to see, possibly movements that will allow a window of opportunity for West Asia to, become more independent and more sovereign. So I do think that there is potential there for these countries to break away from the influence of the Anglo-American and European world and Israel.
And thanks so much for joining us today. And where can people find you and see more of your content?
Oh yeah, obviously I do shows much like I do with you. I also do things on Colonial Outcast, but my own personal work and writings, you can find me on my Substack, on my Patreon. I also do like little updates and videos and writings on my Instagram. And yeah, I have started my own YouTube, but I've only done one video. It does take more work than you realize. But if you want to check that out, I will be working on that going forward. But for the most part, as it currently stands, it's Patreon, Substack, and my Instagram, where I do a lot of videos and writing.
Thank you so much. It was great speaking with you.